The command hall at Forward Operating Base Ironwatch was cold enough to bite through bone. Wind howled against the reinforced walls, rattling loose panels and sneaking in through every seam it could find. Soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder beneath flickering lights, their uniforms dusted with dry mud, faces hollowed by sleepless nights. Some leaned on rifles. Some stared at the floor. No one spoke. Everyone already knew why they had been summoned. Casualties had been climbing for days. Patrols were stalling. Movements were being pinned down. Somewhere out there, an unseen shooter had turned the northern ridge into a killing field. When the general stepped forward, his voice cut through the room like a blade. "I want the Army's best sniper, right now." A few soldiers exchanged glances. Someone scoffed. A quiet laugh slipped from the back. No one moved. Then, slowly, a woman near the rear of the formation stepped forward. She wore no markings of prestige, no elite patches, no symbols of status. Her uniform looked like everyone else's, plain, worn, unremarkable. A whisper passed through the line. "She's from support." Another chuckle followed. She didn't look at them. She just kept walking. When the general turned to see who had answered him, his expression changed. And for the first time that night, he froze. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to FOB Veteran Stories. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? Her name was Specialist Mara Ellison. She was 28 years old, officially assigned to the 32nd Logistics Support Detachment, a unit most people barely noticed unless something went missing or broke. On paper, she handled inventory audits, repair coordination, and field resupply tracking. Nothing about that description suggested danger. Nothing about it suggested heroism. Nothing about it suggested the word sniper. Mara stood with her hands loosely clasped behind her back, posture straight but not rigid. Her dark hair was pulled into a regulation bun that never loosened, no matter how long the day ran. Her face was calm, almost unreadable, with eyes that never rushed. They moved slowly, deliberately, taking in details others missed. Scuffed boots. A cracked radio antenna. The way one soldier's hand shook when he thought no one was watching. She didn't fidget. She didn't shift her weight. She didn't sigh. She waited. The soldiers around her barely acknowledged her presence. A few stepped slightly in front of her without realizing it, blocking her from view. When names were called earlier, no one had looked in her direction. She had learned that invisibility was a kind of default. Someone near the front whispered, "That's logistics." Another voice murmured, "Figures." Mara didn't react. She had trained herself not to. Microaggressions came in small packages. A pause when she spoke, like people needed a second to decide whether she mattered. A polite nod that ended conversations early. A tone that suggested instructions instead of collaboration. None of it was loud enough to challenge. All of it was sharp enough to cut. She breathed slowly through her nose, counting the rhythm in her chest. In for 4, hold for 4. Out for 6. Stillness had become her anchor. Every morning, she woke before the base generators cycled up. She ran the outer perimeter when the world was quiet, when frost still glazed the edges of crates and vehicles. She cleaned her boots with the same care some people gave to weapons. She drank her coffee black. She spoke to no one unless spoken to first. Her bunk was the neatest in the logistics bay. Her locker was organized down to the millimeter, and every night, when others collapsed into restless sleep, Mara lay awake for another hour, listening. Not to the wind, to the silence beneath it. There were moments, fleeting ones, when she felt the weight of something heavy pressing against her chest. Not fear. Not regret. Responsibility. It lived in her ribs, steady and unmoving, like a second spine. She carried it quietly. At the front of the hall stood Major General Robert Halvorson, commander of the Northern Theater. He looked exactly like what he was. Broad shoulders, weathered face, eyes that had seen too much and learned not to blink. His uniform was immaculate, but the exhaustion beneath it was impossible to hide. The lines around his mouth were deeper than they should have been. The shadow beneath his eyes looked permanent. He had slept less than 3 hours in the past 48. Every report he received made the room feel smaller. Hill sectors were stalling. Recon teams were coming back light. Patrols were getting pinned down by a single, unseen threat that no one could flush out. Drones were blind in the storm. Artillery was unreliable in the shifting wind. The map on his tablet looked like a slow bleed. He needed a solution. He needed someone extraordinary. Standing just behind him was Colonel Isaac Reed, his operations officer, a man who believed deeply in chain of command, standard procedure, and earned status. Reed had been a sniper once, years ago, and he still carried that identity like a badge. He was tall, confident, and openly skeptical of anything that didn't fit the expected shape of competence. Next to him stood Captain Lila Moreno, the base intelligence analyst. She was sharp, methodical, and rarely wrong. Her job was patterns, projections, and probabilities. She watched people the way others watched maps. And slightly behind them, near the equipment table, was Lieutenant Noah Vance. Vance was young for his position, not inexperienced, but young enough to still feel things deeply. He carried casualty reports. He made notifications. He escorted the wounded. He was the one who saw the aftermath up close. He was already watching Mara, not with doubt, with curiosity. General Halvorson's demand had been blunt, unfiltered, raw. I want the Army's best sniper, right now. The words still hung in the air. Mara had not raised her hand. She had not spoken. She had simply stepped forward. Now, as she stood closer to the front, eyes level, expression neutral, she felt the room tightening around her. Colonel Reed looked her over once, quickly, and dismissed her. "She's logistics," he muttered. Captain Moreno glanced down at her tablet, then up at Mara again. Her brows knitted slightly. Lieutenant Vance shifted his weight. General Halvorson stared at Mara longer than anyone else. Not with anger, not with mockery. With confusion. And something else. Recognition, maybe. Or instinct. "How old are you, Specialist?" he asked. 28, sir. Unit? 32nd Logistics Support Detachment. Colonel Reed let out a quiet breath through his nose. "Sir." Halvorson lifted one hand. Mara did not move. She did not straighten further. She did not flinch. Her calm wasn't arrogance. It was discipline. She could feel the eyes on her now, not dismissive anymore. Appraising. Curious. Some still amused. Some irritated. She had stood in rooms like this before, rooms that thought they understood her. They never did. Her fingers twitched once, then stilled. In for 4, hold for 4. Out for 6. Lieutenant Vance noticed. General Halvorson leaned forward slightly, not threatening, studying. "Why did you step forward?" he asked. Mara met his eyes. "Because you asked for the best, sir." Her voice was quiet. Not timid, quiet like a locked door. Something in the room shifted, and no one yet understood why. They just felt it, and for reasons they couldn't name, they started hoping she was more than she looked. The room did not settle after her answer. If anything, it grew louder. Not in sound, but in movement. In posture. In the way bodies adjusted, as if everyone was trying to find a better angle to understand what they were seeing. A logistics specialist standing at the front of a sniper call was not just unexpected. It felt wrong to them, like a rule had been broken. Colonel Reed was the first to speak. "Sir, with respect," he said, turning slightly toward General Halvorson, "we have 7 sniper-qualified operators on base right now. 2 of them have combat deployments in this exact terrain. If we're talking about best, we should be talking about them." A tall man near the second row straightened immediately. Staff Sergeant Colin Rourke. one of the base's senior sniper team leaders. Broad-shouldered, confident. "Known. I'll go," he said. "I've already been operating in that sector." A second sniper spoke up, younger, sharper, eager. "So will I, sir." Another voice followed. Then another. They were not rude. They were certain, and certainty, when challenged, can turn into contempt. Mara stood between them and the general like a misplaced object. Colonel Reed looked at her again, this time with open skepticism. "Specialist," he said, "you understand what this mission requires, yes?" "Yes, sir." "And you believe you are qualified?" "Yes, sir." The corners of his mouth tightened. A low chuckle rippled through part of the room. Someone muttered, "This is a joke." Mara heard it. She did not react. General Halvorsen folded his arms. His expression did not change. That, more than anything else, made the tension stretch. "Explain," he said. Mara did not rush. She took one slow breath. "I stepped forward because you asked for the best, sir." Several soldiers scoffed this time, not cruelly, but dismissively. Rourke crossed his arms. "No offense, Specialist, but what you think you are and what you actually are might not be the same thing." Mara met his eyes. "No offense taken." That answer made him blink. Captain Moreno tilted her head slightly, studying Mara like a puzzle. Colonel Reed exhaled sharply. "Let's not waste time. Specialist, what exactly is your training background?" "Classified, sir." That one word landed harder than any raised voice. A ripple moved through the room. Classified was not a word logistics specialists used. "Convenient," someone whispered. Colonel Reed frowned. "Everything can't be classified." Mara said nothing. General Halvorsen shifted his weight. His boots made a small sound against the floor. "Read her assignment," he said. Captain Moreno tapped her tablet. "Specialist Mara Ellison," she read. 32nd Logistics Support Detachment. Inventory audits. Repair coordination. Resupply chain management. No sniper designation listed. A few soldiers laughed outright. Mara's face did not change. "Sir," Rourke said, "this is ridiculous." "With respect." General Halvorsen did not respond. Colonel Reed turned directly to Mara now. "Why are you here?" he asked. The words were simple. The tone was not. Mara looked at him, then back at the general. "Because the shooter on that ridge is killing your people," she said. The room quieted slightly. "Because conventional approaches have failed," she continued, "and because time matters." A few heads tilted. Rourke scoffed again. "You don't get to talk like that if you're not the one bleeding out there." Mara did not look away. "I am," she said, "not emotionally." "Factually." Lieutenant Vance swallowed. Colonel Reed shook his head. "Specialist, I'm trying to protect you here." "You are not trained for this level of operation," Mara answered without heat. "You don't know what I'm trained for." That was when the laughter faded. Not fully, but enough. The tone in the room shifted from mockery to irritation. People were not used to being contradicted by someone who looked like her. She did not look elite. She did not look dangerous. She did not look like a legend. She looked like someone who moved boxes and checked manifests. And that was the problem. "What would you have done in that moment?" the narrator might have asked. Would you have stayed silent? Mara did. And yet, somehow, she wasn't. General Halvorsen raised a hand slightly. The room stilled. "Let her speak," he said. Colonel Reed looked at him, surprised. Rourke looked annoyed. Mara lifted her eyes. "Sir," she said, "you asked for the best sniper, not the most decorated. Not the loudest, not the one who looks the part." Her voice never rose. "You asked for the best." There was no arrogance in it, just clarity. Rourke laughed again, louder this time. "You don't even have a rifle assigned, Specialist." "That's correct," Mara said. So how exactly do you expect to? Because I don't need one issued, she replied. That finally made people stop smiling. Captain Moreno's fingers paused above her screen. Colonel Reed's brows pulled together. General Halvorsen tilted his head slightly. Explain, he said. Mara did not. Not yet. Pull her full file, Halvorsen ordered. Captain Moreno's fingers moved quickly. What appeared on her tablet made her inhale sharply. Sir, she said. The room leaned in without realizing it. It's mostly redacted. A few soldiers laughed again. Rourke rolled his eyes. Of course it is. Mara closed her eyes for half a second. Not from shame, from calculation. Colonel Reed shook his head. This is becoming a distraction. General Halvorsen did not move. Read what isn't redacted, he said. Moreno scrolled. Advanced Marksmanship Instructor Certification, she read slowly. That made someone whistle. Rourke frowned. Instructor? Moreno kept reading. Extreme Environment Operations. Long-Range Ballistic Specialization. Field Adaptability Protocols. Silence began creeping in around the edges. Colonel Reed turned back to Mara. You trained snipers. Yes, sir. Where? Mara named a base. Rourke's expression changed. Just slightly. He studied her again. Not dismissive now. Searching. He took a step forward. You failed half my class, he said. Mara met his eyes. I filtered your class. His mouth opened. Then closed. He remembered. He remembered the instructor who had not yelled, who had not praised, who had simply removed people from the program when they hesitated, not punished. Removed. Because hesitation got people killed. A few soldiers noticed his reaction. Captain Moreno did. Lieutenant Vance did. General Halvorsen did. Rourke's voice was quieter now. You're that instructor? Mara said nothing. She did not confirm. She did not deny. The tension thickened, not from hostility, from uncertainty. People were no longer laughing. They were thinking. Mara felt every eye. And still, she did not defend herself. General Halvorsen studied her. Why did you really step forward? He asked, not as a challenge, as a question. Mara looked at the floor, then back up. Because I could stop it, she said. A murmur passed through the room. Stop what? Someone whispered. The deaths, she replied, simple. Unsettling. No grand speeches. No drama. Just that. Rourke scoffed weakly. That's a big claim. Mara nodded once. Yes. General Halvorsen did not interrupt. Would you have stayed silent? The narrator might have asked. Or would you have done what she did? Mara stood in the middle of the room, unmoving, unflinching, letting their doubt exist without trying to erase it. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, something changed, not into belief, into curiosity. Smirks softened. Whispers slowed. The laughter disappeared. People began to look at her differently, not with respect, but with the question that always came before it. Why? Mara did not move the way most people did. It was subtle, almost invisible, but once noticed, it was impossible to ignore. She didn't shift her weight from foot to foot. She didn't lean. She didn't slump. Her stance was balanced, centered, as if every muscle knew exactly how much tension it needed and no more. Her feet were placed with intention, not comfort. Captain Moreno noticed first. Not because she was looking for it, because she couldn't not see it. That was a shooter's posture, not aggressive, not wide, just prepared. Lieutenant Vance saw something else. As Mara folded her hands again behind her back, the sleeve of her uniform pulled slightly, revealing a pale, thin scar along the inside of her wrist. Not jagged, not accidental. Clean, precise. Not the kind of marks someone got from crates or metal edges. Rourke noticed it too. His eyes narrowed. When the discussion shifted to terrain, someone pulled up a ballistic projection on the main screen. Wind speed, elevation, thermal interference, a standard model. Captain Marino was explaining why the shot was nearly impossible when Mara spoke again. Quietly. The wind shear at that altitude won't be consistent, she said. You'll get microbursts off the ridge face. The drift will oscillate, not hold. Moreno blinked. That's not in the model, she said. It should be, Mara replied. Moreno typed. Adjusted. The projected shot arc changed. And suddenly, the model looked worse. A few people noticed. No one laughed this time. Rourke stared at the screen. Then at Mara. How do you know that? He asked. Mara shrugged. Because that ridge is concave on the western face. Wind wraps. Moreno inhaled slowly. That's correct, she said. The room shifted again, not toward belief, toward attention. Someone leaned forward. Someone else crossed their arms. Mara reached down to adjust the strap of her bag. As she did, a frayed patch briefly peeked from beneath the fabric. Old. Almost completely erased. Just the ghost of a symbol. Rourke's eyes caught it. He squinted. Then froze. He had seen that patch before. Years ago. On a range. On an instructor. On someone who never stayed long. Where did you get that bag? He asked. Mara looked at him. It was issued, she said. He didn't believe her. But he didn't say it. Not yet. Colonel Reed cleared his throat. General, with respect, we are drifting from the issue. General Halverson did not look at him. His eyes were on Mara. She hadn't moved. She hadn't postured. She hadn't tried to prove anything. And yet, the room was no longer about anyone else. Lieutenant Vance noticed the way her gaze flicked briefly to a name that appeared on the screen. Just for a fraction of a second. Too fast to mean nothing. Moreno noticed too. Mara, she said. Mara blinked. Ma'am, do you recognize that call sign? No, she replied. She was lying. Only Moreno seemed to know. A senior NCO near the back stepped slightly forward. Sergeant Major Harlan Pierce. He had not spoken once. He had just watched. Now his eyes were fixed on Mara. Not suspicious. Not hostile. Searching. He tilted his head. Just slightly. The way someone did when they were trying to remember a face from a long time ago. Mara felt it. She did not look at him. General Halvorsen finally turned to Moreno. Pull everything, he said quietly. Moreno nodded. She tried. Her brows knitted. Her fingers slowed. Sir, she said. Yes. This file, it's not standard redaction. What does that mean? It's compartmentalized. Cross-theater. There are entire years missing. A murmur rippled through the room. Rourke stepped forward again. Missing how? Blank, Moreno said. Not erased. Not deleted. Sealed. Silence crept in. Mara closed her eyes for a moment. Not in relief. In resignation. General Halvorsen's voice was calm. Who sealed it? Moreno scrolled, then stopped. Her eyes lifted. Someone with authority, she said. Above base level. The room stilled. No one laughed. No one scoffed. Rourke swallowed. Sergeant Major Pierce stared at Mara now, openly. Recognition tugged at him. Not complete, but close. Mara could feel it. She kept her face neutral. Her breathing steady. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 6. Lieutenant Vance shifted uncomfortably. What would you have done in that moment, the narrator might ask. Would you have explained yourself? Mara didn't. She stood there, letting the weight of unanswered questions hang in the air. letting curiosity replace mockery, letting silence do the work. And somewhere in that quiet, every person in the room felt it. Something big was coming. They just didn't know what. General Halvorsen did not raise his voice. He did not bark orders. He simply said, "Show me." The room froze again, but this time not in mockery, in confusion. Colonel Reed blinked. "Sir, not a mission," Halvorsen clarified. "Not a shot. Just show me something," Rourke scoffed quietly. "With what? She doesn't even have a rifle." Mara didn't look at him. She turned her eyes to the projection screen instead, where Captain Moreno still had the terrain model displayed. Wind vectors shifted in pale lines. Elevation curves overlapped. The ridge glowed faintly in thermal mapping. Mara took one step closer. Just one. Not dramatic, not theatrical. She studied the map for a long moment, long enough that people started shifting again. Long enough for impatience to creep back. Then she spoke. "The first shooter isn't on the ridgeline," she said. Moreno frowned. "That's where the heat signature is." "It's a decoy," Mara replied, "placed to draw counterfire." Rourke shook his head. "You're guessing." Mara tilted her head slightly. "No," she said. "I'm observing," she pointed, not with a finger but with her eyes. "See that depression, east-facing? It creates a thermal pocket. If you were trying to mask a primary position, you'd use the reflected heat from that slope. Not the peak." Moreno zoomed in. Her breath caught. "There's distortion," she said. Rourke stepped forward. "That's sensor noise." Mara shook her head once. "It's movement memory," she said. "The shooter shifted positions there recently. Heat hasn't settled yet." The room leaned in. Not physically, mentally. Moreno ran a secondary filter. The pocket glowed faintly. She looked up. That could be a hide." Rourke stared at the screen. Then at Mara. Then back at the screen. His jaw tightened. General Halvorsen said nothing. Mara kept going. "They're rotating two-man teams," she added. "One draws attention. The other observes reactions. They're mapping your response times." Moreno's fingers hovered. "That would require predictive modeling beyond standard insurgent tactics." Mara nodded. "Which means they're not standard." Rourke's scoff was gone now. He was studying her like a stranger. "What makes you think that?" he asked. Mara answered without pause. "Because the last 3 engagements weren't about kills. They were about data." Silence. Moreno pulled up the reports. Comparative overlays. She froze. "They're right," she said quietly. "They're probing." Colonel Reed exhaled slowly. Mara shifted her weight slightly, then stilled again. General Halvorsen took a step closer. "Continue," he said. Mara did not smile. "They're waiting for you to send a counter-sniper," she said. "And when you do, they'll adjust." Rourke's voice was low now. "You're saying this is a trap?" Mara met his eyes. "Yes." The room didn't laugh. It didn't whisper. It just listened. Moreno scrolled again. "Her prediction aligns with the last 2 patrol ambushes," she said. "They didn't capitalize immediately. They waited." General Halvorsen's eyes never left Mara. "How would you engage?" he asked. Mara did not answer immediately. She studied the map again. "They're expecting a direct approach," she said. "They've covered that." "So what's your solution?" Reed asked. Mara's gaze lifted. "Don't give them what they expect." Rourke frowned. "That's vague." She nodded. Then she spoke again. "They're watching your movements from the ridge, but they're blind to lateral ground shifts in the storm. Their field of view is vertically optimized." Moreno's eyes widened. "You're saying they won't see someone coming from the basin?" "They'll assume it's impossible," Mara replied. Rourke let out a slow breath. "That ground is suicide." Mara nodded. For most people, that line landed differently, not arrogant. Precise. General Halvorsen folded his arms again. Not defensively, thoughtfully. Rourke stared at her, and then something in his face changed. Not anger. Recognition. Slow, uneasy. "I've seen you before," he said. The room stilled. Mara did not react. Rourke frowned, eyes narrowing. "Years ago. Training range. Mountain environment." Mara said nothing. "You were quiet then too," he continued. "Didn't talk much. Didn't yell. Just watched." She breathed. "In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 6. "I was in that class," Rourke said. "I got dropped." Mara finally looked at him. "Yes," she said. "That was it." Not apology. Not explanation. Just acknowledgement. Rourke swallowed. "You failed me." Mara tilted her head slightly. "No," she said. "I filtered you." The words were the same as before, but now they meant something. Rourke's throat tightened. "I didn't make sense of it back then," he said. "I thought you were cold." Mara's eyes softened. "I was careful." The room felt heavier. Not with tension, with weight. General Halvorsen stepped closer. "You trained snipers," he said. "Yes, sir." "But your logistics now." "Yes, sir." "Why?" Mara hesitated. "Just a fraction." "Long enough that everyone noticed." "I requested reassignment," she said. "Why?" She didn't answer. Rourke's voice was quieter now. "You disappeared after that course." Mara nodded. "Most instructors rotate." "No," he said. "Not like you." Mara said nothing. The general was watching her differently now. Not assessing, observing. Moreno cleared her throat. "Sir, everything she said checks out." Reed shifted. "That doesn't mean she should be sent alone." Mara spoke again. "I wouldn't be alone," she said. They all looked at her. "I'd have you," she added. Halvorsen's brows drew together. "What does that mean?" "It means I'd give you a window," she said. "Not a miracle. A window." Silence. Rourke looked at her. "You're not bluffing," he said. Mara shook her head. "I don't bluff." General Halvorsen's gaze hardened. Not with suspicion. With seriousness. "How do you know the exact shot timing?" he asked. Mara inhaled. "Because they change shifts at wind troughs," she said, "not peaks. They're optimizing sound masking." Moreno's mouth parted. "That's advanced." "Yes, ma'am." Rourke stepped back slightly. He was no longer dismissive. He was unsettled. "You're not just trained," he said quietly. "You're built for this." Mara didn't respond. The room was silent now. Not heavy. Not awkward. Intent. General Halvorsen turned to Moreno. "Run her approach through the model," he said. Moreno hesitated, then typed. The path Mara had described. Through the basin. Under storm cover. Moreno's eyes widened. That avoids every known field of view," Reed muttered. "That's impossible," Mara said quietly. "Unlikely." Rourke's voice was barely audible. "I remember you." Everyone looked at him. "You told us once," he said, "that if we wanted to live, we had to learn to move where people didn't look." Mara closed her eyes for half a second, then opened them. General Halvorsen exhaled slowly, not in frustration. In recalibration. He was watching her now like a variable that could change everything. "What would you have done in that moment?" the narrator might ask. "Would you have spoken?" Mara had. And now doubt was cracking, not breaking. Cracking. No one laughed anymore. No one whispered. No one scoffed. They were afraid, not of her. Of being wrong about her. And for the first time, they hoped they were. Sergeant Major Harlan Pierce took one slow step forward. He had not spoken once since the room had started to change. Not when laughter died, not when calculations shifted, not when doubt cracked. But now he stood straighter. And older. He studied Mara like he was looking through time instead of at her. "Ellison," he said quietly. She did not respond. Not because she hadn't heard him, because she had. "You trained at Black Range," Pierce continued. "Winter cycle. No markings, no photos, no public rosters." Mara's eyes flicked to him. Just once. That was enough. Pierce exhaled slowly, like the truth weighed more than the words. "You weren't an instructor," he said. Silence pressed against the walls. "You were the filter." No one moved. "You weren't there to teach," he went on. "You were there to decide who lived long enough to matter." Mara closed her eyes. Not in shame. In recognition. Colonel Reed looked at Pierce. "What are you saying?" Pierce never took his eyes off Mara. "I'm saying she wasn't attached to any standard unit," he said. "She didn't rotate. She didn't deploy on record. She didn't exist where paper could follow." General Halvorson's posture shifted, not visibly, but completely. "What was she?" he asked. Pierce swallowed. "Selective operations," he said. "Long-range extreme environment, deniable." He didn't say the word sniper. He didn't need to. Mara opened her eyes again. She did not look proud. She looked tired. The room was no longer breathing normally. Captain Moreno's hands had stopped moving. Rourke's arms had dropped to his sides. Lieutenant Vance forgot to blink. Pierce took another step. "You didn't miss," he said. Mara said nothing. "You didn't need teams," he continued. "You didn't need Overwatch. You didn't need extraction windows." He paused. "You were the window." General Halvorson's jaw tightened. Not in anger, in understanding. He straightened. Fully. For the first time since the meeting began. "You hid her," he said quietly. Pierce nodded. "She asked us to." Mara's gaze dropped to the floor. Not in guilt. In acceptance. The silence became heavy, not awkward. Sacred. No one spoke. No one whispered. No one laughed. No one shifted. It wasn't shock. It was weight. The kind of weight that presses into the chest and makes you realize you've been wrong about something important. General Halvorson took one step forward, then another. He stopped a few feet from her. And for the first time, he didn't look at her like a variable. He looked at her like a responsibility. His voice was low. Respectful. "You're not logistics," he said. Mara didn't answer. "You're not support," he continued. Still, she said nothing. "You're what we send when there are no words left." The room remained silent. Not a single breath was wasted. And in that quiet, every person present understood something they had not before. They had not been laughing at a nobody. They had been laughing at a ghost. And ghosts did not announce themselves. They only showed up when things were already breaking. The silence did not break. It spread. Like a ripple moving outward, touching every face, every breath, every thought in the room. Rourke was the first to look away. Not in shame. In recalibration. His arms, once crossed in certainty, fell slowly to his sides. His shoulders squared, not defensively, but properly. As if he were standing in front of something that deserved it. Others followed. A few soldiers straightened without realizing they were doing it. Spines aligned. Chins lifted. Eyes softened. No one laughed anymore. No one whispered. No one needed to. Lieutenant Vance swallowed hard. He had been the one carrying casualty lists. He had been the one knocking on doors. He had been the one standing next to stretchers. And now he was standing in front of the reason those lists might finally stop growing. He took a step forward, then another. No one told him to. He stopped 3 paces from Mara and raised his hand. A clean, precise salute. Not loud. Not dramatic. Correct. The sound of his palm meeting his brow was the only thing in the room. It echoed. Rourke inhaled sharply. Then, slowly, deliberately, he mirrored it. Another salute. Then another. Then another. Not all at once, one by one. A line of quiet recognition. Mara did not move. She did not smile. She did not lift her chin. She did not shift her stance. She accepted none of it. She endured it. General Halvorsen stepped forward. Not as a commander, as a man who finally understood what he had almost missed. He stopped in front of her, removed his cap, and inclined his head, just slightly. It wasn't protocol. It was respect. You answered a call that was never meant to reach you, he said. Mara met his eyes. You didn't ask for praise, he continued. You asked for responsibility. Yes, sir. The room held its breath. Then that's what you'll have, Halvorsen said. Not as a ghost. Not as a shadow. Mara's gaze dropped. Sir, with respect. I know what you are, he said gently. And I know what it costs. She did not reply. I'm not asking you to be a symbol, he continued. I'm asking you to be a solution, Mara exhaled. Slowly. In for 4, hold for 4. Out for 6. I will not fail them, she said. Not a promise. A statement of identity. Halvorsen nodded. The mission begins now. Moreno was already moving. Coordinates were being re-entered. Paths recalculated. A new approach forming. Rourke stepped forward again. Sir, he said, if she's going in. She's not going in, Mara said. Rourke paused. She's going through, Halvorsen corrected. Mara's eyes flicked toward the map. Her mind was already there. Wind. Slope. Thermal distortion. Timing. Windows. She did not ask for a rifle. She did not ask for backup. She did not ask for reassurance. She simply stepped closer to the projection. Your artillery will need to be delayed by 8 minutes, she said. Any earlier, and they'll shift. Reed blinked. How do you know that? Mara didn't look at him. They always do. The words were not dramatic. They were practiced. She outlined her route. The basin, the blind zones. The storm's cover. Moreno adjusted. Everything aligned. Rourke stared at the path. That's impossible. Mara shook her head. No, she said. It's just ignored. Halvorsen looked around the room, at the faces, the expressions, the recalibration. He had asked for the best, and something far rarer had answered. He straightened. We move on her timing, he said. We trust her window. No one argued, not one person. Mara stepped back. Not from the plan. From the attention. I don't need recognition, she said. I need silence. She turned toward the door. No one followed. No one spoke. They watched her walk away. Not because she demanded it, but because something in them insisted. And in that moment, every person in that room felt it. The shift. From doubt to understanding. From mockery to awe. From noise to purpose. Mara Ellison did not carry their admiration. She carried their lives. And that was heavier. The room did not return to what it had been before. It couldn't. When Mara moved through the corridors afterward, people noticed her now, not with curiosity. Not with suspicion. With care. Conversations softened when she passed. A few soldiers straightened instinctively. Others nodded, unsure how else to respond to what they now knew. She did not acknowledge any of it. She walked the same pace, kept the same posture, carried her bag the same way. When a young private nearly dropped a crate in the supply bay, she stepped in without comment and lifted one end like she always had. When someone asked for a form, she filled it out. When a radio needed repair, she fixed it. No one called her by a different name. No one dared. And she did not ask them to. General Halvorsen stood alone in his office that night, staring at the digital map. The new approach line glowed faintly against the storm cloud overlay. For the first time in days, it did not look like a wound. It looked like a chance. He thought about how close he had come to dismissing her. How close he had been to choosing the obvious instead of the necessary. How many times he had done that before without knowing it. He removed his cap and set it on the desk, not in exhaustion, in humility. He realized something then that no doctrine had ever taught him. The most dangerous mistakes were not tactical, they were assumptions. Out in the supply bay, Lieutenant Vance watched Mara quietly as she logged inventory updates. Her hands moved steadily. Her breathing was slow. She looked like someone doing ordinary work. He wondered how many people like her had walked past him before. Invisible. Not because they wanted to be, because no one had learned how to look. The narrator might ask, gently now, not challengingly, how many lives had been saved by people who were never thanked? How many wars had been shifted by hands no one applauded? Mara finished her report and closed the tablet. She sat for a moment. Not in reflection, in readiness. Because that was who she was. Not a legend. Not a story. A responsibility. And when she stood, she carried that weight the same way she always had. Quietly. Without needing anyone to notice. Moral, some of the strongest people in the world don't ask to be seen. They simply make sure others survive. Somewhere tonight, someone like Mara is walking past you. Not in uniform, not with medals on their chest, not with a story they want to tell, just a person doing their job. Carrying weight no one can see, holding lines no one thanks them for, choosing discipline over praise, responsibility over recognition. Quiet courage doesn't announce itself, it doesn't ask for permission. It simply shows up when it's needed most. If this story reminded you of someone who served without being seen, if it made you think of a name, a face, or a memory you haven't said out loud yet, then this story did what it was meant to do. Because courage doesn't live in speeches. It lives in people. And people deserve to be remembered. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe for more FOB veteran stories. These stories keep the courage alive for generations to come.